What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Silence to Talk podcast with Dustin and Kyle. We got an awesome guest today. I say that every time.
I know.
Every guest that we bring in is awesome. So we got Leonard McElveen. And what's cool about Leonard is he spoke several times at our church. And I was telling him today, I haven't heard his testimony. I know it's a great one. He's a former vice president of Trotter Ministries, which does so many good things for the kingdom of God. And I'm sure there's a ton of stories because we work pretty well hand in hand with them downtown Grand Rapids. And they do a lot of awesome stuff, but it does present a lot of challenges. So we're so thankful you're here, Leonard, and that we could line this up. And we're looking forward to hearing your testimony.
So I'll say, I was talking to Kyle before this and Leonard. My wife and I have heard Leonard's sermons from our church on and off, and we love them. We love them. And my wife always when we hear Leonard, we always hear, she always thinks of the very beginning of your sermons and what you come up with a little joke. And if you'd start us off with that, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, just before I get started, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a privilege to be here, and it's also a privilege to be speaking to those of you who are listening. I want to say something about the concept of the joke. The concept of the joke came to me because, I worked in a stressed environment where people were overloaded with anxiety. Am I stuck? Am I ever going to get unstuck from this? Is there ever any hope? And we would try to bring the hope, which is in the gospel itself, but sometimes we have to help you listen. And so the idea of the joke is to help you disarm yourself without realizing that you're disarming yourself.
Yeah.
And so when you have a burst of laughter and you do that as a group, it puts you in a better position to be able to hear a little bit better what's actually being said instead of just being like in a drowning with your own stuff that's going on. God wants to get our attention. And then when he gets our attention, he wants to give us instructions of how to deal with the situation we're in, but also how to get through the situation that we're in. So that was the original.
So it's like an attention grabber.
Off
the gate.
And it's funny how humor is like a universal thing that people use. We do it in the police world. You're dealing with the worst of the worst. You're seeing some nasty stuff. Yeah. And people think we have sick senses of humor or whatever, but it's humor that gets you through it. And we talked to, Kathy Forsyth, and she's like, her husband's going through cancer. They brought an element of humor into the hospital when they're in there with all the different workers and stuff. And it's the humor that actually gets them through it because it gets their mind off of like the pain and the struggle.
Yeah.
And like you said, it refocuses you.
Oh, yeah. They've done research that actually proves that when you're going through a trauma, that if you can bring laughter into it, and especially if it's not laughter that's degrading toward you, not that type of laughter, but a general sense of laughter in the sense that there are things that we all know, we all experience, we really don't say it out loud, and comedy gives you an opportunity to say it without saying it, and then laugh about it.
Hell yeah.
And then while you're in that mood, that is the best time to set you up for a brand new truth.
That's good.
So that was the concept behind it. So now that you've heard the concept, let me tell you a little story, boys and girls. So there was a policeman who, had a stressed out week working, and it's a Friday afternoon. And so as he's on patrol on a Friday afternoon out on the expressway, he didn't know it, but all of a sudden a senior citizen showed up on the highway with a brand new Corvette. And the senior citizen was, trying to, compensate himself because, we're losing things as we grow older. So he buys a brand new Corvette and he becomes like a little boy again. And he says, I want to see what it can do. I want to see what it can do. And so he goes out on the highway, throws caution to the wind, and he gets out on his Corvette. He gets up to about 80 miles an hour. He sees the policeman on the side of the highway, and then he says, I wonder if it'll do 120. And he gets up to 120 miles an hour, and the trooper pulls up, puts his lights on, pulls him over, gets out of his car, walks up to him. He said, "Man, what's wrong with you? You're driving 120 miles an hour, and it's a Friday afternoon." And he says, "I got 30 minutes before I get off. If you can give me a reason why you're doing this that I've never heard before, I might let you off." So the senior citizen sit there, and he thinks to himself, got his head down looking. And he thinks of it. He looks up and he says, "Officer, 20 years ago, my wife ran off with a state trooper. I thought you were bringing her back."
Yep. I haven't heard that one.
And then he proceeds to let him off scot-free. Yeah.
You're free. You're free.
That's good. Okay, so now you got our listeners' attention, right? So we can move into what we're really here for, and obviously to glorify God with this story. But I've heard you have an awesome testimony. I've heard bits and pieces, through different things, with your sermons in the past. But I really would love to go through your story, how you got to the point where you're now vice president of Trotter Ministries. You're helping people through some of the same struggles that you have gone through, and then just how God has changed your life. And hopefully we can get out to the right people today and bless some people with your story. So take it where you want it to go, man.
Well, I'd like to start off by saying that my story is a little bit, it's an original of my story itself. It's not the way things happen to everyone else. I never want to imply that your story should be exactly like mine. God has written a book on each one of us, and it is a good book, but it's got some terrible, difficult, struggling chapters in it, and mine was that. And, I thought when I was a child that I was probably one of the, I had a difficult childhood. I had a difficult time coming into life. I was born to a 17-year-old mother. I understand it, who got pregnant, didn't know what to do, had a child, hadn't even started her own life. She was still at her own mom's house. Mm. And then 5 months later, my grandmother died. Mm. And so the kids, there was no grandfather, so the kids were all shipped out to different relatives.
Yeah.
And my mother, her sister, and myself went to live with one of my grandmother's half-sister. Mm. And she took us in, which saved our lives. Mm. This was in the South. This was during the time of people sharecropping on a farm. So my folks came from sharecroppers. Sharecropping is just a extension of slavery. You work on the farm. Yeah. No one can read and write. You work for someone. You don't own anything. You don't own the house you live in. You don't own the utilities. You don't own anything. And the man that owned the farm keeps the books. So at the end of the year, you always end up owing money so that you have to stay the next year and work off that money from last year.
Keep you in debt.
Then the next year, you always end up owing a little bit of money. And that went on for over 100 years.
Wow.
And so I was kind of the last of that in my family. I was the first one to be able to go to school and graduate high school and all this kind of stuff. The cotton was getting to a point where now they had a cotton picker, but not probably until I was 13 or 14. Up until that point, we picked the cotton in the field. So it's a life that a lot of us, especially in Michigan, are not aware of. It's basically Southern slavery is what it was.
Yeah.
So then we went to my grand aunt house, who they also were sharecroppers. So I got a chance to work on the farm growing up. I was driving a combiner probably when I was 10 years old.
That's kind of cool.
Well, kind of.
Yeah, it's hard work.
It's hard work, man.
Yeah, it is.
It is hot and it's hard and it's outside and it's all day long.
And you, as a 10-year-old, you don't even know what you're doing, really. I mean, as far as like the perspective of it.
Yeah. Well, even like I think as a 5-year-old, I was driving the mule in the field, while they were cropping the tobacco.
So it's like it's just all you know.
It's all I knew. And so coming into that situation, I thought that I had the worst of all things happening in my life. But it did teach me how to work. It did teach me responsibility. We had a pretty big farm, and we had to get help. And I was the person that could read and write. So I was the person that kind of like the manager who was making sure that we paid people every day. So making sure that they got their pay right, that they got picked up, how many hours did they work, how long was the lunch hour, blah, blah, this. I go to the store. Okay, what did you get? I had to keep a record of that.
Yeah.
He got a honey bun and a pop and this and that. Somebody else got a beer or whatever. We had to keep it, tab it, track it, and then at the end of the day. So it was actually preparing me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But
You just don't
how
know
many
it in
of
the
us
moment.
actually see that?
Right.
And there are people right now that are going through something that is preparing them for something that God has for them down the road, but it doesn't seem connected whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's the way my life was going. And I went from there to one of my uncles who actually went away and came back, and he made it as a drug dealer. And so, I'm growing up in this lifestyle that everybody says you ought to try to be something. You should try to be somebody. And since I didn't know God, I thought, well, he got way more than we got.
Yep.
And I'm working my tail off.
And I'm
over
working
here.
for this, man, hard. I mean, summertime, it's long days. You might work 15, 16 hours a day, get 3-4 hours of sleep, and you're 3:30 in the morning, man. You got to be up taking that tobacco out of the barn that got cured out, so that you can get some new tobacco in here. And then you got to figure out how you're going to get this cured out tobacco to the market.
Wow.
And this is not happening during the day when you're out there working in the field. So this all have to happen at night.
Yeah.
And then before daylight in the morning.
That's crazy.
And
So
that's
there's no lack of work ethic.
no. Listen, I worked.
Yeah.
And the thing about, we were big tobacco farmers, but we had other crops too, soybean, corn, things like that. But with tobacco, when it's in the heat of the summer and it's ripening, every 4 or 5 days, you got to get it out of the field. If you don't, it burns, and then the price goes down at the market.
Yeah.
And my uncle, my great uncle, I mean, he knew this stuff. I mean, if I made a mistake of 2 cents paying someone, he knew.
Yeah.
He's like, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Like, Leonard, what are you doing over here? What are you doing?
You don't make mistakes with money. He had a third grade education, but he didn't have a problem counting money. He knew how to count money really, really
Everybody
good.
knows how to do that.
So, as I was going through all of that, I thought, man, I'm going to get everything I can out of this life as fast as I can get it, because I'm probably not going to live that long anyway.
Yeah.
And that was my attitude. And it was during that period that I started questioning, if there was a God, and if there is a God, what is this all about? And so when I got to be 17 years old, I had to make a decision what I was going to do, and it was pretty obvious that my aunt and uncle did not want me to stay at their house. So I made a decision. I wanted to go to college, but where am I going to get the money from? My uncle said, "Well, we'll help you." And I'm like, if you, and they were constantly telling me about everything that they had done for me, how much I owed them, and blah, blah, this. I was like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
You're indebted to them.
Yeah. So I heard an ad on the radio that said, if you go in the Air Force, you could get your college paid for. So I thought that's a way to get to college. So I joined the Air Force.
Nice.
And when I joined the Air Force, that was another lesson that I needed to learn in my life that I didn't know that I needed to learn in my life. And like the first thing they told me is that we're going to get you up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I thought, I don't get up to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, after I'm away from the farm. And no, we can get you up at 5 o'clock. I didn't know you could do so much stuff from 5 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. I had no idea that you could get that much stuff accomplished. And so that kind of introduced me into a little bit different lifestyle, but I did it so that I could go to college. The problem is that I had made some money selling drugs, and I didn't stop that. So I kept that going, and I did it while I was in the military. Wow. And the guy who used to do the drug tests, I used to sell drugs to him. So he would change people's tests, when they came back positive.
Dang.
I'm not giving his name. It's years. He's probably dead now anyway.
Well, you built up some skills growing up that actually was probably good for
survival
the drug
skills.
trade,
It was really good for the survival skills because everybody was miserable. Everybody was looking for a purpose. We're always doing that. We just don't know that it's God. It's actually what we're looking for.
Yes.
So I'm out there trying to fulfill that. And in the midst of doing all of that, I also started experimenting with acid and, like hard drugs. I would experiment them just to see. I guess I was trying to be like God. I guess I wanted to be a God, just like was offered to Eve in the garden. I think we all kind of walked through that. This was just my way of doing it.
Yep.
And when I started now asking these deeper and deeper questions, I thought I had become so successful at what I did. I was successful doing the farm. I was successful when I got into the drug business. I was successful in the military. I had done those things so many times that I think that God was just waiting for me to do the most stupidest thing at the right time so that he could get me where he wanted me, so that he could speak to me and give me some sense.
Yes.
And we all need that.
Yeah, and you get so caught up in chasing that next thing that you think is going to fill you up, and that's actually distracting you from who's standing right in front of you.
That's right.
And sometimes you got to hit rock bottom in order to see that, and people wonder, why did it have to get to this point? And it's like, it's because you had so much stuff in the way that I wanted to get out of the way.
That's right. And expose it in a way that you could see it for what it really is. There's a big thing in our society today called conspiracy theories. When we think of conspiracy theories, we think of some alternate view of the way the world actually works. I've been thinking about this, and I may even do a sermon on it at some point. I think that we all have had or currently do have some aspect of a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory is when you know what the truth is, but you're going to come up with a little bit different version of how you're going to pull it off so it doesn't feel the way it's supposed to feel.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the truth, kind of, but it's got kind of a little bit of a...
Yeah.
You're twisting it.
Yeah, you're twisting it just a little bit.
Yeah.
So that something in you says you might be able to get away with this, but another part of you says, no, it's not reality.
Right.
And I think that's what I was doing. And I was trying to use drugs to figure out a way to get closer to God, who I didn't know. But I thought, I got a little bit of experience with this. Maybe I can make this work.
Yeah.
And then while I was doing acid, and I got to where I would do more and more and more and more, because at some point, when you start doing something repetitively and it becomes a habit, you start thinking that you have control over it. And you don't have control over it. Yeah. And in the midst of one of those acid trips that I was taking, God decided he would interrupt it and give me an audience with him about reality. And there is always good news when God comes to you. But sometimes it feels a whole lot more like bad news before it becomes good news.
Yes.
I mean, there is the first part of it that says, I think somebody needs to change here, And so I overdosed on drugs and then had an out-of-body experience in which I met God.
Wow.
Not God directly, but God showed me that there was truth. There was a real truth that existed for mankind, and I had missed it.
Wow.
And because I had missed it, I lived my life in such a way that was in direct opposition to everything that he meant.
Yeah.
And I saw that clear without a filter for the first time. It is a marvelous thing to see things clearly without a filter if they're going your way.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is not such a marvelous thing to see things without a filter when they're not going your way. They're not going to go your way. It's not ever going to go your way. I'm outside of time now, so this is just the way that it is. And for all practical purposes, I thought I died. I saw myself dying in the back of a car, and then I went through a tunnel. I had never read any books about near-death experiences or things that happen to people. I never read anything or heard anything like this. This was just my experience. Mm-hmm. Dude, you have done wrong, and you have been found wicked.
Wow.
Yeah. And here's what happens to wicked people. And so I saw not myself in hell, I saw myself going to hell.
Wow.
Holy cow.
And there is no feeling like feeling condemned, knowing that it is just. You actually believe it's right. You just wish it wasn't true.
Right.
Ooh.
And that's where I was at.
Wow.
That's where I found who I was and the results of a life that I had lived my own way and where it led me. And it was in that moment. I had a lot of experiences while I was in this out-of-body experience, but it was in that moment that I realized that only God could save me from the situation I had gotten myself in. And it was only God who could provide a way of solving this situation. And I heard the word, only Jesus can save you. I heard it like a voice where I was at. Only Jesus can save you from this. And I had used the word Jesus, but only in terms of cursing.
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was real. I had heard his name before. I even think that living in America, there's no way I didn't hear some version of the gospel before. But evidently, I didn't hear it.
You didn't take it in.
Yeah, you can hear things and not hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. God is always giving us stuff. God gives us what we need when we need it, but we don't always notice it.
No.
And I didn't notice it until he pulled everything away and said, there's nothing left for you. Here's where you're going. And I'll tell you, it was horrible.
Yeah.
If you can take the way I try to explain it to people, if you could take your imagination and you could just take it as far as it will go. Imagine the most awful thing you could ever imagine. This didn't even start there. If you could go 1,000,000 miles past what you could imagine and just enter a reality that is a reality of itself that has nothing to do with your imagination, your imagination doesn't get to filter it a certain kind of way. That's where I found myself.
That's scary.
Wow.
And it felt in that moment like this was going to be my forever. It was just going to get worse because I hadn't even gotten to hell yet. I hadn't gotten to stand before God yet. And I knew that was coming. And how do I know these things?
Yeah.
When I don't know these things.
Right.
It's crazy.
But they were so certain. And this is why I try to encourage people in my ministry that faith is a powerful thing, even if your imagination can't capture it the way it should be captured.
That's good.
Truth is a powerful thing, even if you can't comprehend it, even if you can't filter it down and relativize it yourself to make it what, kind of like it the way it is, but just a little bit contaminated. The beauty is that Jesus has already taken care of this.
Amen. And
it's not on you. Or I like to say, and I've told my wife I'd like to start getting some T-shirts that say, it's not about you, boo.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's just not about you.
We think it is, though.
It feels like it's about me.
Our world tells us it is about you. Well, it is all about you.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and our culture is built that way. And you were talking about how, so God works in everything for good, right? And you were talking about those steps when you're younger and you're growing up. You're getting put through these things growing up. And you didn't even realize, and none of us realized at the time, because some of it's hard. Some of the stuff we go through is very hard stuff.
God was preparing me for the rest of my life, and I had no clue. From the time I was born, it looked like I was born in the wrong situation at the wrong time, under the wrong circumstances. Today, I know that I was born in the perfect situation at the perfect time and under the perfect circumstances. I could see that clearly.
Yes.
This is the reason why I don't hold anything against the people who did what they did. And my mom had to do what she had to do. I mean, she's just a human being. Mm-hmm. She just did what she had to do. She didn't know that by having to leave me, that it actually was setting me up for the original plan of my life, which is to meet with my Maker. So she played a critical role in me becoming a minister for the gospel. If it wasn't for her, it would have been harder to do.
Holy cow, Leonard.
It was perfect.
My mother, I told my testimony at the very beginning of all our podcasts, but my mother was 17 years old and she had me. She left when I was a baby. Didn't even know her, man. Like, she left. And that's the same thing with me.
Yeah.
That brought me to Christ.
Yeah.
It took a long time down the road later.
Well, of course.
And forgiveness and stuff like that. But that's what brought me to Christ. So you're right. I mean, some of the stuff we deal with and people getting down in these situations, and man, go to God, bring it to God, because he is the ultimate say at the end. That's who you went and you've seen that.
That's right.
You've seen
God
that.
Simply allowed it and not just allowed it because, well, I kind of hate the situation and blah, blah, this. No, he allowed it because he already had a bigger plan already for me. Otherwise, I would have been born in a different situation under different circumstances. But these were the circumstances that were this was chapters in my book. Just like Moses had the chapter in his book when his mom took him to the river and put him in there. You know how hard that had to be for her?
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm. But that was a chapter in his book in becoming Moses. And that was bigger than Mama.
Oh, yeah. Mama
was just a tool.
Yes.
Yes.
So I can't hold anything against my mom. She was just an instrument of the hand of God without even realizing that she was an instrument of the hands of God. So she must be precious in his sight for him to use her like that.
Yeah.
And, ministry was in my family, but it skipped over a generation. So my mom's grandfather was a pastor.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So it had skipped over a generation. And he came from other pastors. It had just skipped over. It was something that God had designed from the very beginning. So as I am there and I'm feeling all of this despair and hopelessness, despair says there's nothing you could do to change this. It's going to stay this way. That's what we feel in those moments.
That's from evil.
And then God says, you got to call on Jesus. So I'm going through all of these different experiences, trip experiences, beyond trip experiences, other world experiences. I'm experiencing entities I get into a big tug of war with an entity by the name of death.
Yeah.
A real thing called death. Yeah. And between death and me is a hole, and death has got me by the belly. There's a string. Keep in mind, my body's down here, but you have a body that goes with you.
Yeah.
Your spiritual body goes with you everywhere you go. And so when there's a string on my belly button, and death over there is pulling on that string, and between us is a bottomless pit.
Are you seeing this?
I'm seeing this, man. I'm not just seeing this. I'm experiencing this.
You're in it.
I'm feeling everything there is to feel about this. Wow. I realized I got a pull for my life. And I had been a really good athlete, good baseball player, basketball player. I played football in high school. I was one of the fastest guys on the team. I was one of those guys. And so I thought, well, I'll figure this out. So I'm pulling. There's nothing like pulling and losing.
Yeah.
Not all at once. See, we can handle a big loss. People can have a tragic big loss and really come back from it. The problem is the little losses.
Yeah.
The problem is that the descent that happens over a long, gradual period of time.
Yeah, it stacks up.
We were just out with some friends, a friend this morning who's just come back from the missionary field, and her mom's at home, and she's losing. She's not losing all at once. She's losing over years.
Yeah.
So now we got to be patient now to realize that this person is losing. So I'm there and I'm losing. And I realize, man, if I don't ask Jesus to help me, I'm going to die. So I get like 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch closer to the bottomless pit. I'm pulling. I get another 1/4 of an inch. I'm not there yet, but man, I'm headed toward there. Then I get right up to the edge. I'm still trying to pull. How dumb can you be and still be breathing? I'm still trying to pull.
And you're losing.
In a world that I don't know anything about, which things seems to be fixed pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's not whatever you want to make it.
Yeah.
And I'm losing, and I still can't think to call Jesus. So finally I hear this voice again that says, call on Jesus. And I said, Lord, if you will save me and take me back to the earth, I'll serve you. And I let go, and I fell into the bottomless pit. And I had the experience that you have when you're in a dream and you're falling, except this is worse because you don't have time like you have here. So when you fall, you feel like you're falling forever.
Yeah.
And I fell, and I fell, and I fell, and I kept falling. And I thought, you can't fall anymore. I kept falling.
Wow.
And I thought, this has got to be over soon. But it wasn't over. I just kept falling and falling and falling and falling for what seemed like forever because we weren't in time.
Yeah.
And I fell back in my body.
Wow.
Then I got high, like a real high. So I had to ride it out. So I'd had this experience and then kind of like a high experience. But I knew that God had saved me. That somehow there was a God. He was real. I just needed to figure out what to do next because I was scared now.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, now if I die, I can't say I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
He's already showed me. So then I'm like kind of...
So during this period of time, did you have anybody in your life that was speaking God into you at all? Before this period?
Weird things. So I didn't think I had anybody that was doing that. Turns out that there was a guy, his name was Orlando Diaz, and he was praying for me.
Wow.
He was stalking me. He had figured out who I was, and he was looking to run into me. And 2 weeks later, we ran into each other on an afternoon on the base where I was outside. trying to get girls. And there's a girl who was a fortune teller. And I said, okay, yeah, tell me, and I was like, playing the game.
Yeah.
And we're outside. It's probably like 4:30 in the afternoon. I don't know, 4:30. And he walks up. The first thought right away, first of all, he glowed. He was bright. And then he started telling her how the fortune telling wasn't true and it wasn't real. So just before he walked up, she said to me, I see something happening to your life and it's going to be great. And I said, well, what it is? She said, it's like bright light. I can't see past it. Oh, wow. But something's going to happen to you that's going to change you forever. And then he walked up.
Wow.
My Lord.
That was my first God sign. And he said he was talking to her about Jesus. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't make any sense of it.
No.
It was just, that was the crazy thing that had happened to me already. And then it was like gibberish about Jesus. And I couldn't put it all together. I didn't think it had anything to do with going to church or anything like that, because you can see how far away I was.
Yeah.
And so he starts talking, and then eventually she runs off, and I was thinking, thanks, dude. And then he starts talking to me about Jesus, and I knew this had something to do with what had happened to me, but I didn't know what.
Yeah.
I couldn't stay away from it, so we talked for a couple days. He came by my place. And then, I don't know, a couple weeks after that, he invited me to go to church. He called me on a Saturday night and said, hey, what are you doing in the morning? I said, nothing. He said, how'd you like to go to church with me? And I thought, well, shoot, I ain't been to church in a long time. It wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah.
So didn't think anything of it. I didn't think anything was going to happen. So we get to church, and then all of a sudden the pastor of the church, I thought, well, did this guy tell the pastor about me?
They're setting me up.
Something's going on here.
Yeah.
And the pastor's talking to me, and he's talking to me like he knows me, and it kind of like he's talking to me like he know I had this experience too. Oh, wow. And so he gives an altar call, and I'm sitting there. He's like, anybody want to give their life to Jesus? Little small church, 80, 90 people.
Yeah.
So as I'm sitting there, I hear two clear voices doing the altar call. They're playing music, and everybody's down in their pews praying. And one voice said, yeah, now that you know this, you can just kind of wait until you're about to die, and then you could do it then.
Yeah.
And then I heard another voice that said, no, this is why I allowed you to live. You need to go up and surrender to Jesus.
Wow.
So I got up. First step's always the hardest one.
Yeah.
That first step was hard. I mean, it was a battle. And then I got up, I got to the altar, and the pastor said, you sure you want to give your life to Jesus? I said, well, what does it mean? He said, well, it means that you'll be under new management. Well, I understood that.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I want to do that. He said, well, why don't you just kneel down there at the altar and tell God what you're sorry about. So I went through the things I could think of, I'm sorry I sold drugs to people. I'm sorry people overdosed on drugs. And I tried to think, I'm sorry about I had a pretty bad anger problem, and I'm sorry about that too. And I could only think of so many things. So I'm there doing the best that I can, and I'm saying what I can think of. And while I was at that altar, I had another out-of-body experience. Only this time I didn't go down. I went up. And I went up, and I was kneeling, still kneeling like I was in the church, but I was kneeling before a throne.
Holy wow.
The substance of it is not like anything of this earth. That's why John keeps saying in Revelation, it was as like. but it was lack of substance like marble. And I realized I was kneeling before the throne of God.
Oh, wow.
And I told him, I said, I haven't done a good job with my life. I give it to you. And if you'll take it, I'll follow you. And I'll live for you.
Join Kyle and Dustin next week for part 2 of their interview with Leonard McElveen on Silence to Talk podcast.